Hey everybody, it's the Trout and welcome to another episode of the Trout Show. Thank you so much for stopping by. You know, I've been a blues fan ever since I heard my very first blues song, which was way back a long time ago. And I think it was the Rolling Stones who, when they first started out, started playing some blues songs like Little Red Rooster. And I said, man, I really like that stuff. And I admit that I have played a few Robert Johnson songs on my Les Paul when I've jammed out with my band. And I've always been a follower of those blues players that are from the traditional areas of America, you know, like Chicago blues or the Southern blues, all that kind of stuff. And I'm always intrigued by the people that don't live in the United States that follow and enjoy the American blues. Well, that's the story we have today. A band out of the UK called the Catfish Band, who I talked to about why they started playing the blues and why they're doing it now, and why they keep getting awards for playing such great blues music. They're headed by Matt Long, the guitarist and singer-songwriter, and his dad, who is the keyboard player. They talk about how the band got started, how they continue to do very well. You know, it's just like everybody else. You start out in little small pubs, and then you get bigger and bigger because they have decided they want to do blues their own way. And that's really the story here about people taking the blues and making it their own. But you know, life is bittersweet, and unfortunately, Matt has been diagnosed with cancer, and he's fighting that battle now. But he has a lot of friends behind him and people that are supporting him, and I hope, not only the UK, and I hope people in America do the same thing. He's a great guy, and we need to continue to hear his music with the Catfish Blues Band. So if you want to know about a band that started in the UK that love American blues, then you want to stick around and watch or listen to this episode with Matt Long of the Catfish Blues Band. That's next on The Trout Show. I'm going to start with you, Paul, first. You've been in the business quite some time.
Yeah.
And what did you start, when you started out, what was your first job were you with the BBC? Were you in a radio business? What were you doing?
My first job was a lighting and sound technician at a theatre in Exeter and Devon.
Okay.
I was still at school and college at the time, but I would do it every evenings and weekends and holidays. That got me the bug. That got me the bug of not working 9 to 5, but basically working 9 in the morning till 2 in the morning. So. So that's how it started. And I also used to do gigs with my dad. My dad was a singer, or is a singer. Well, no, he doesn't sing anymore. He's still with us. And we used to do cabaret, and he would sing Frank Sinatra and Bing Crosby and standards and show tunes, and I would play guitar. So I was about 6, I suppose, upwards when we were doing that. Old people's homes, anywhere really. And then I got into music seriously at school and started joining orchestras and bands and that sort of thing. And then went to music college in the 70s, found my way into a new wave band, punk band, and then got into rhythm and blues in the 80s, really. And I found myself in a band that was very much like the Fabulous Thunderbirds, that kind of R&B.
Who still tour, by the way. I follow them on Instagram. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah,
Kim is still their leader, still playing. He just doesn't have any hair anymore.
Yeah, so I saw last time.
And Jimmy Vaughn doesn't play with them anymore. He hadn't been for a long time.
No, not for a long time. Yeah, so that's where it all started. Really, music's just been in the blood since I was a kid. Really, backstage with my dad at musicals, and then singing and playing with him.
So when you were into the new wave stuff, who were you listening to at the time?
Oh, my favorite bands would have been XTC, The Clash.
Oh, I like XTC.
Joe Jackson, XTC in particular. They stuck with me. They're always more adventurous musically, and that's kind of stuck with me through the years. I really love that band still.
And you know, I haven't reached out to them. I should, because one of my favorite songs is "Mayor of Simpleton." That's one of my favorite
brilliant
songs.
Yeah, brilliant track.
I love that too.
Yeah.
And Joe Jackson. I haven't heard much about him for a long time. I guess he's still around with us. I don't know.
Yeah, he had a new album out quite recently. Another swing type album, jazz type album.
So Matt, when you were growing up, you were exposed kind of like with your dad. Your dad was exposed Did you follow him around and watch his gigs or something, or were you exposed by that?
Exactly that, yeah. He was in a band at the time called the Riotous Brothers, and they were playing sort of rhythm and blues, R&B sort of thing going on. And I used to go to the gigs all the time, and just kind of sit there and be in awe of everyone in the band, and I just really enjoyed it. And also had access to my dad's music collection, so that obviously helps me get into a lot of music as well.
Were they albums or CDs or both?
CDs. This was early, well, not early, but like I grew up on CDs rather than vinyl. I was just in that generation there.
Yeah.
I used to pop them in my what do you call them? Like the boombox type thing.
Oh,
so
yeah.
A boombox type thing. And just put them in there all the time. I miss that, actually. There's kind of like an element of listening to music that I don't really have anymore. It's all just on my computer now. But I miss having little.
You still see some of my vinyl collection behind me on those
shelves.
Yes, I
do.
I still have
I see it over your right shoulder.
No, I've never quite gotten into the vinyl thing just yet, but I feel like I could do it at some point.
We just used to call them records.
Yeah. Oh, exactly. Yeah.
It changed when everybody stopped listening to them, and all of a sudden they started calling them vinyl. I don't know.
Exactly.
It's just what they happened.
Now it's the cool thing to do. Yeah. Well, it's always the cool thing to do. But I just used to kind of pick things out here and there, and obviously a lot of the stuff was blues based. So people like B.B. King, Stevie Ray Vaughan, Hendrix, all the kind of main guys, Gary Moore, basically all the quote unquote typical blues rock guys. But then as I grew older, I got more into rock, and then as I grew older from there, I got more into heavy rock and the metal and things like that. And then as I got into my adulthood, I just started realizing that I like more than just these three things. I just wanted to branch out and listen to everything, really. So now I'm just like a bit of everything. If it's good, it's good. I enjoy it, and it's been really freeing actually doing it like that. Just kind of giving everything a go rather than kind of like pigeonholing yourself into specific genres. And it's nice. I think it's something that comes with age, is just generally having a bit more open-mindedness to music in general.
Paul, did you start playing the piano? Was that I know obviously that's your big thing. You're playing keyboards. Was that what you started playing?
No, I started as a guitarist, and I went to music college as a guitarist, and I was at the Guildhall in London, and even I realized in my last year that I could only name 3 professional classical guitar players, and one of them wasn't going to be me. But at
so
the
you
same
played
time,
classical? Is that what I understood? You right?
I did then, and acoustic fingerstyle stuff.
Yeah.
And I realized I was getting more. I got into recording, and I started to get more offers of work for recording than for playing. And so my sort of, it all flipped really. I became an engineer, and that's when I joined the BBC, became a music engineer and producer there. And I was there for, more than 40 years. I still freelance for them now.
Wow. I saw a picture the other day of the first big desk or board they got at Abbey Road. I think it was 8 channel.
Yeah.
And I was showing it to my wife, and I said, why don't you look at this picture? And of course, it had the big faders, the big things that had that big sliders.
Console. Yeah.
And I said, but more importantly, look at it and tell me what's interesting about this picture. She goes, I don't know. They're all in a suit. They were in suits. It's like, well, you won't see that anymore. You might. And it was at Abbey Road, obviously. So.
Yeah. Abbey Road and the BBC were very similar institutions in a way. They'd both been going for so long.
Yeah.
They both had a hierarchy of apprentice and engineer and senior people. I mean, even when I joined the BBC in '82, people had stopped wearing the lab coat. But there's still a picture of me when I joined wearing a shirt and tie. But you
it's
soon
kind of
found
a classy time.
Yeah, but if you wore a tie while you're editing tape, you were going to get your tie caught in that machine, and the reels were moving fast. So you soon learned that you don't wear a tie when you're editing.
And for you, Matt, though, and I was kind of interested in what you said about the music. I'm always intrigued by people that don't fit the narrative, so to speak. So there's a couple of blues people I've interviewed out of Ireland, and it's always interesting to me when I start talking to people, because people know the blues started in America. But when I get somebody like you that are leader of a band that has had the awards and new stuff, and you get all this blues, it's always like, okay, where did they get this thing that said I got to play the blues? And you mentioned the name of the people, and you probably are aware of this. I started listening to blues, listening to people, because I'm much older, all the British bands. When the Stones were playing Little Red Rooster and Howlin' Wolf stuff, and I'm going, oh, I kind of like this stuff.
Yeah.
And then I started following, the older style music and got into it and really liked it. I don't know whether it's because it was only 3 chords and it was easy for me to play. But I just, it was just one of those genres that came out of America that I still enjoy playing. But it has to be a group. It's very kind of niche-y, because people don't necessarily want to sit down to 2 hours of blues concerts unless they're blues aficionados.
Sure, yeah.
But then, I was reading your guys' biography, which is kind of interesting to me because, Paul, you're the one that kind of took the band because, Matt, you put the band together quite some time ago, didn't Catfish? When did you establish that band?
Come August, it'll be 10 years ago.
Oh, it's been a while.
Yeah. And it started out, kind of just jamming out some of the typical blues things, like just playing in local pubs, making some money, having fun, really. But we started out doing those traditional blues sort of things. So that's always been deep-seated in our roots as a band, really. But I've always said that we should write this type of music that we want to write, because if I suddenly started trying to be, we've always said we can't physically sing about songs about picking cotton, being out in the fields and that kind of thing. That just would not work. So we've always said we're not going to try and do that. We're going to try and do our own kind of thing. We're going to do our sound. We're going to do what feels natural to us, just as they did to them. So yes, it may well be that we developed a more of a rocky sound. We would call ourselves a blues rock band. We would never call ourselves traditional blues at all, because we know that we're just not at all in any way. But we wouldn't say we're a full-on rock band, because we do have those little bluesy, rootsy influences here and there. So it's trying to find the balance between the two. And I've always said that I don't want to pigeonhole myself into doing one particular thing. I want to be able to write what I want to be able to write. I want the whole band to be able to write what they want to write, and kind of naturally come towards the sound that we would naturally go towards, rather than trying to sound like the American bands or the American artists at the time, or trying to sound like the British guys, trying to sound like going back and forth, things like that. So it was, it took a while to kind of find our way after starting out as that covers band, to find our own sort of sound. And it took an album or two to kind of get there. And yes, some of it might not even be considered blues at all, and that's totally fine. But I've always been happy at the fact that we just write the stuff that we want to write, if you know what I mean.
The thing I find interesting is what you were saying about the Rolling Stones. If it wasn't for bands like the Rolling Stones, Manfred Mann, and bands like that in the UK, a lot of those African American blues artists would have just been totally forgotten in that music.
Yeah, right.
And it's kind of how that then came over to England and then went back to America in that new form. And that kind of follows on, because then by the time I was getting into it, I would be hearing bands like Free and Little Feat and Led Zeppelin, and thinking, I like this bluesy thing they've got. Where does that come from? And then you go back one generation and you find the Rolling Stones. Then you go back another generation and this is where it came from.
Yeah.
And I think now for young people, now they're going to go, who's this Bonamassa guy? Who's this Stevie Ray Vaughan guy? And then it's even further to find your way back. But I think nothing goes on to what Matt was saying about what we feel we can write and sing about, because all the influences that have happened along the way, from 50s Chicago blues to Government Mule now, all those influences build on the musical form. We can't pretend to be purists. Those influences all along the way have taken us on the journey too.
With you guys, though, and I think you're absolutely right, Matt, it's difficult. What we start in the music industry, and you start out and you go, okay, I want to do this, and you're hoping people like it, and you try to do something like everybody else to a certain extent because you want to have people listen to you.
Yes.
And then you realize, why am I doing this? Why I want to do what I like, and if they like it, and they like it, if they like it, if they don't like it. You know, and that's just the way it is. Now, it may affect the fact that you may not get a lot of gigs. Hold on just a second. I got something on my computer. Okay. But at the end of the day, you're doing what you like.
Yeah, we've definitely had moments like that. So when you stop being a blues covers band that plays in pubs and decide, no, we're going to write our own material and we're only going to do paid entry shows. This is a big change in the way the band works there. There's no guaranteed income anymore. Will people like it? All those sort of leaps of faith you have to make as a I don't like to use the word artist too much. It's too fancy.
Right.
But as a musician doing their own material, you've got to take that leap of faith that somebody else is going to like it and want to come and pay money to hear you, really.
But Paul, don't you think that people that are talented, you know, that will shine through eventually? I mean, because, you know, I think if you got talent, still watch American Idol. Still watch America's Got Talent. I'm more of an American Idol person because my wife, I've been watching it for a long time. I've been involved with some of the people that have been on the show, luckily for me. Got to know how it works behind the scenes. That's always interesting to me.
Right.
But the thing about it is, it always is the same. If you watch the show enough, the better artists always end up winning. You know, and they pick all sorts of music until they start telling them what to play and all that stuff. But I tell my wife, she'll watch it, and she still asks me questions. I don't understand that music phrase that they'll say because they drop stuff like, that's got a lot of space in it, or, you know, something like that. If you're not a musician, you don't know what they're talking about. And I said, and she finally realized years ago when I told her that person had it, because she goes, what do you mean it? I said, they don't even know they have it. But once you have it, and you know that you have it, you can use it. Paul, when did you realize, I know according to what I've read, and tell me if I'm wrong, when did you realize you think, man, these kids got something going, and maybe I should step up and try to get them a little direction, get them a little more exposure?
I'm not sure it was like that, really. I mean, the band started because Matt was at college, and the bands he was in at the time all sort of fell apart at the same time. And I was there and said, well, look, do you want to do something? We'll just jam something out. There was no master plan at the beginning. But really, I think it started to change when we recorded our first album, which was all blues covers. And I sent it to the blues show at the BBC, and they played a track. And overnight, it changed the people's perception of the band. It was amazing. Just one track got played. And
that's all it takes.
It's all it takes, the number of people that listen to that show. So that really helped us. Then we thought, then we started adding our own material, and it seemed that people were liking it too. So I think it was there that we all took it a lot more seriously, and started to tour rather than play gigs, and end up being able to play abroad, touring in Europe, in mainland Europe, and all around the UK. And it became something none of us ever thought it would. And we lost along the way our drummer and bass player because they were not able to cope with the amount of work we were doing, the touring. They had grandchildren, families, children.
It wasn't what they signed up for originally.
No.
No.
So the band changed, became more professional, if you like, in that sense. But it's always been a mystery, really, how any of this. I always think the harder you work, the luckier you get.
Yep, that's a great saying. I've heard it many times. Yeah.
Yeah, and we worked very, very hard at it for a long time.
So Matt, when was the time you were standing on stage and the crowd is going crazy for you? When was that moment you went, wow, this is unbelievable? Do you remember that moment when it happens? When it happened? Where were you? Where you think where you were playing and going? I mean, I'm sure it's one of those things that probably builds up. But then there's that one time that you're playing, and we've all been performers. We know when the audience is into it. So it's usually that one moment you go, "Oh man, this is I'm here now. I'm God where I want to go."
It's a good question because, yeah, like you said, it did build up after a long time. It kind of, we progressed from pubs to venues to even bigger venues to playing big festivals to headlining big festivals and going over on overseas and stuff like that. So it has been a bit of a ramp up. But I would say the first time it felt, maybe not the first time, but one of the biggest times where it felt real, and that we were doing something quite big, was when we did our first overseas tour in the Netherlands. And I was expecting, to play in like little pubs and not be that many people there because we'd never been there before. I didn't think anyone would have heard of us. But we did a solid week of quite big venues, like a couple of hundred people, a few hundred people. And we got out there and we were playing. We were just surprised to be in these kind of venues. It was really lovely places, proper equipment, and everyone looking after you really well and all that kind of thing. And we started playing, and people were singing back some of the words to our songs. So not only were we in a foreign country that we'd never been to before, but they had obviously listened to our stuff enough that doesn't happen all that often in the UK, that they're singing along to that, certainly that time. So all of a sudden we were in a completely new place, an alien place to us, and people were singing back the lyrics to the songs that we had written. And I was like, this is surreal. This is incredible. So that was a big one for me. It was like realized, yeah, we can definitely do something with this. And we'd been going for a few years, and we'd kind of had the notion of doing it, but that was a very big kind of like milestone for the band at that point. And I'll never forget that one. And since then, we've been going back to Europe a lot and doing a lot of stuff over there, and we really enjoy it. We try and go as often as we can. And it's just a wonderful place to be. Not that the UK isn't, but just, but yeah, that was probably quite early on, one of the big moments for me in the realization. And then a few of the big festivals in the UK as well. We played a big one in Sheffield called Hard Rock Hell.
Yes, I would say the Sheffield one, yeah.
Yeah, the first time we played Hard Rock Hell, played it twice now. That was probably one of the biggest reactions we ever got at the end of a gig. Massive standing ovation from thousands of people, probably about 3,000 people, something like that. At that point, was one of the biggest crowds we had played to, and certainly was one of the biggest crowds that we played to in the UK. And just having that wall of sound when we played the last notes, just absolutely like deafening sound from the audience, and it made me cry right then and there on stage. I broke down in tears because it was just that powerful from that audience.
But before that loud cheer, there was the quiet bit in that song. Matt did a really quiet solo. We turned the guitar right down, nearly off in a small venue, but not off in a 3,000.
Yeah,
and it was silent. 3,000 people, totally silent, and you knew there was something, but you could just feel the atmosphere. It was electric, and then we got to the end, like Matt says, it all just went mad, didn't it?
That was really special. It really was.
Yeah.
That's what, in my opinion, that's what God does to you to keep you doing it.
Yeah.
I live on a golf course. I used to play a lot of golf. And I have a lousy round and get towards the end, I'm parring holes. I'm going, yeah, I know how it goes. Now I'm going to have to come back. It's like, okay, all right, this is not so bad. I'll keep coming back. I wish that people could feel what you felt at that moment. Because nobody can tell you how that feels. Only you. Yeah. When you write a song and the people they're singing it back to you in a language they're not even in your language. I just had this conversation with a Hispanic performer the other day about playing in different languages. But then this crowd, and I understand what you're saying, Paul. When you have the crowd and they're listening to that, and you're probably, when you're playing, I imagine, Matt, you were probably somewhere else. You were like, I always said, you had kind of an out-of-body experience because you're like, and people don't understand that either, but it's like, you're sitting there, Paul's going like, holy crap, look at this band, and look at the crowd. Yeah. They are into this all the way. And it's almost, I'm sure when you walked off, I can appreciate the fact, because my wife's asked me, why do people cry when people have a standing ovation at the performer? I said, I can't explain it. I said, it's like you've reached the epitome of what you're going for, at least at the point in your life, that you never thought you were probably going to get there. And then you hit it, and you're like, oh, wow. You know. And the great thing about you guys, too, is the fact that you can tour, you can go to Europe and hit a lot of spots relatively close. You know, if you come to the States, everything's so spread out.
Yeah.
And it's easy over there. When I say easy, it's easier because you can travel 100 miles or whatever and get to the next venue, so to speak. And then you've done so well that has anybody of fame talked to you and said, like your music, or have come up and talked to you or reached out to you and say, I really like what you do?
Well, one of our kind of close friends was friends with Paul first, and then gradually as the band started going, we all became really good friends with him. It's a guy called Walter Trout, American legendary American guitarist.
I know Walter.
Oh yeah. I figured you would do. Yeah, he's just a wonderful human being, and he's always been really supportive of young artists and in general. But he's always taken an affinity to me in terms of my playing. I've known him from when I was quite young, and he's always kind of like every time we met him, we always have a lovely chat, and he's always got all the time in the world to talk to me, and he's always been really supportive. He's even got me up to play with him a couple of times and jam with him. And it's just, he's such an electrifying man, that man.
You were humming along, getting all these awards. I have a standard joke with my friend, because over here they're always throwing stuff around like award-winning this, award-winning barbecue, award-winning that, you know.
Yeah.
But yours are real. And you keep getting them. That has to tell you something about your music, and it's being accepted wherever you go. And other than, well, I was going to say real quick, I'm sure you had visions of coming to the United States eventually.
Oh, we'd love to. And we did do well, technically we did a show out in the States. We headlined a festival out in Omaha called Playing with Fire. Unfortunately on that one though, Paul couldn't make it because he was undergoing an operation at the time. So it was just a 3-piece version of the band. So technically we have played a gig, but not a full gig with the full band. And yeah, no, we loved it out there. And we'd love to go back again. But as you say, everything is so far apart that in order to do a full tour, it would take you months to get through the whole of the States, or even just part of it, really. So,
well, then I think you really have to go after sponsorship. Because it's expensive. We know how expensive.
Yeah, we'd have to look at things like that, or we'd have to look at just mainly doing festivals for a while, kind of getting the name out there, and then building our name up a little bit, a bit more out there, and things like that. So it would take a while to do, but it's something that we would love to do at some point for sure. Well,
I always have the same rule for every performer. When you get to Dallas, you have to give me, you give me the pass. You put me on the list, as they like to say.
Yeah.
As one artist said, "Do you want to get the meal too?" And I said, "Hey, if you're going to give it to me, why not?" You know, so that's it. So you know, I think the thing for me is, and when I was talking to Fiona about this, emailing back and forth, she wanted to know if I knew about your situation, and I said I did, but I didn't want to get on here and talk about that, except only to offer an opportunity for people to know how they can support you. And what you're going through. And then she told me about you, Paul, that you've been through it a different way. You know, we all have stories of people that had this terrible disease. My brother-in-law has it now. My dad passed away with it years ago. So I guess the question for you, Matt, is you're doing this career thing. How are you coping with the pressure of both trying to get through your medical and still trying to keep the band going?
It's certainly not easy, and it has taken a toll on the band for sure, because, you know, you have to look after yourself. That's the most important thing. You have to get your health in check. So when I got my diagnosis for cancer, I automatically just went, I was basically planning on being like, no gigs, just focus on this, get better, and then once you're better, you can get back out there and do it again. But my doctors said to still do something, like in terms of gigs, just to keep your mind afloat, just to kind of keep you sane, if anything. So I basically did just festivals for basically a whole year. And we were just starting to creep back into doing venues and club gigs and things like that again, a bit more normal gigs. And then my diagnosis worsened, and we're probably going to have to cut things back again in order to give me a bit more of a fighting chance. So it has definitely taken a toll on the band, and it's we've been trying to write a new album for so long, and first of all, COVID happened, and then Paul had a heart attack, and then Paul busted his head open, and then Paul had his diagnosis of prostate cancer, and then shortly after that, I got my diagnosis, and then now I've gotten, my situation has worsened. So it's all kind of just taking its toll on getting new things out there for sure. And, try as hard as we might, things just keep getting in the way. So, but like I said, we got to take care of ourselves is the main thing. The gigs will come back, the music will come back, and we'll have more time again once we're better. But we need to give ourselves all the chance and the time to be able to do that. So yeah, it's not been easy, and emotionally, it's not been easy either. Because obviously, I'd love to be able to get back out there and doing my usual gigs again. But it's obviously quite an important thing to get sorted out. So it's, yeah, I would say it's very hard to balance the two, and almost impossible, really. Because not only has Paul still got to figure out all his things, but I've now got to figure out what's going on with me, how I'm going to feel, starting the new treatment. So it may even get to a point where we have to basically just cancel everything. Yeah. But we don't know yet for sure. We're going to wait.
The advantage you have is you got a guy that you can talk to about it.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. I mean, we've been
you can
by each other's side this whole time,
but also it's and I understand this is what you love to do. Both of you are involved in music.
Yeah.
And you almost want to press yourself, but John Lennon had a great saying, and that is, life is what happened to you when you're making plans. Mm-hmm. And that's where you are right now with this. And it seems to me, from what I've read, and of course I'm way over here, that you're getting a lot of community support and other bands that have stepped up, because aren't they having some gigs or something festivals or some kind of gigs to support your financial situation?
Some benefit gigs, and a fundraiser has already been put in place that has already raised about £76,000 and rising, which is just incredible. That's just out of people's pockets and just the kindness of their hearts. And then we've also got these benefit gigs as well, which will raise even more money again, just to give us more of a fighting chance to be able to go private and get things sorted, and give me the best chance I have, really. Which is just outstanding and really incredible, and it honestly means the world to me and my family.
Oh, sure.
And just, no matter what happens, like at the end of all this, it's just really nice to know that there was a whole army of people right behind me, and just an absolute wave of support, just absolutely pouring in, basically for, constantly. People have always, people were just constantly making sure I was okay, and donating whatever they could, and just doing whatever they could. Even just telling people about it, and getting out there. So, there's just been so much community help. I've always said the music scene is a community and almost a family, really. Yeah. A lot of the people there, we all know each other, we're all friends, and it's just a really tight knit group of people. So
at the end of the day,
I feel like they do that for everyone.
Yeah, what I was going to say is, you never know how many people you affect.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. This has really put it all into perspective.
You just don't know. You never know. And sometimes it's years later that you run into people that had you an effect on. And I think what you've seen is the fact that you've touched a lot of people. Music touches people. Let's just face it. And That's the great thing about it is you don't want to be going through this, but at least you know you have support.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
that's what's good about it. And have you guys, and then I'm going to move on to something else, but have you guys set up like a GoFundMe or something like that, or what are you doing?
Yes.
That? Okay.
Yeah, there's a GoFundMe, and I guess we could send you the link and put it on any
Yes,
site this
please
is on,
do that, and I'll
which would be
mention
a wonderful
that.
thing. Yeah,
Yeah, sure, I'd be glad to do
and
that.
like I said, we raised about £76,000 already, and climbing with the benefit gigs coming in, and it's all giving me a fighting chance, and it's going to make the difference. Really, it really is.
So
Yeah.
let's change directions a little bit. What's your favorite guitar that you like to play?
My main one for the longest time, well, I say the longest time, recently, has been my PRS.
Oh, really?
I got a PRS SC 245. It's not on the wall at the minute. It's downstairs. And that one's just been like my go-to for pretty much everything.
What
It's
kind of
basically-
pickups does it have in it?
It was based on like an old school like 59 Les Paul type
Okay.
thing. So it's kind of like the old PAFs,
Okay.
but PRS versions of them.
Yeah.
It's like it's got the sound and the feel of 59, but like kind of modern feeling. It's a bit more comfortable. A few more cuts here and there and things like that. But recently, a good friend of mine out in America, actually out in Washington, a guy called John Beeson, he actually built me a guitar. He does kind of his own thing back in his house. He's got his own little setup at home and just builds guitars, mainly just because he loves doing them. And he's not even really a guitar player. He just likes building guitars. He built me this guitar. And it's just a wonderful thing. It's Wood Spirit Guitars is the name of the company that, well, I guess his home company sort of thing. And we kind of designed it together. Like he kind of asked me to come up with a design, and I asked him to kind of fill in the gaps here and there because I don't know how to build a guitar. He does.
You just play it.
Exactly. Yeah. I the opposite thing to him. I don't know how to build them. I just play them, whereas he knows how to build them. He doesn't play them. So it was a very.
I know somebody
mutual
else
thing.
like that too. It's kind of weird. Yes. Yes.
It was just a really cool thing just to have this collaborative thing between us, and it's just come out really beautiful. I think Paul's actually trying to get it out now. I believe that's what he's trying to do to show you guys. But it was a really fun thing coming together, just building it together. There it is.
So it's got two humbuckers in it. Then it's got a.
It's a humbucker in the bridge, a hot stack in the middle, and a P90 in the neck.
Oh, okay.
Just to get a bit more slightly.
So it's a semi-hollow body. I see that. Yeah.
Semi-hollow, yeah. He specializes in them. We went for the Jazzmaster shape because I already have. I'm a big Les Paul guy, but I already have Les Pauls and PRSs and that kind of thing that do that kind of thing. So I wanted a bit more of like the Swiss Army knife guitar and a bit more of an interesting shape. And it's all like black and gold and nice and bling and all that. And he's just done a fantastic job on it, and I'm very thankful to him. And he's been building some more for a few friends of ours. I guess one that he's confirmed is a guy, American guy called Matthias Latine. He was the winner of the International Blues Challenge out in the States. And he's a great guy, great guitar player. So he built one for him. He's building one for my friend over here. He's building one for I don't know if I'm officially allowed to announce it yet, so I'm not going to say specifics, but he's building one for quite a high-profile guitarist at the minute, a certain Grammy Award-winning guitarist. It's funny because I've seen the design of it already, and it looks very similar to my guitar.
Oh, really?
And I was like, everyone else was like, oh, he's pinched your idea. And I was like, a Grammy Award-winning guitarist is using my design. I'm quite happy with that. So, he's doing really well. Wood Spirit Guitars, John Beeson out in Washington. Check it out. Get yourself one. They're really good. One of my favorite videos in that respect is there's a video of Steve Ray Vaughan playing at the Austin City Limits.
Yeah.
And he broke a string mid-solo. You wouldn't even notice because he was just playing a blinding solo. But he had broken, I think, the B string, something, I don't know.
Yeah.
And you just see him kind of look over very, very slightly to his right and look over at his guitar tech. And then just in the middle, he just suddenly he's singing. There's like a stopgap. And he's singing. Whilst he's singing, takes the strap off, takes the cable off. Guitar tech comes running over, puts the other guitar on him, puts the strap on, plugs it in, doesn't miss a beat, just comes straight back in on the next bit. And I'm like, That's the most incredible thing I've ever seen. It's literally in the space of about 5 seconds, just switching guitars out like that. I'm like, that's the coolest thing. And it's almost like a dance in the way that they had that thing. And I'm like, that's honestly one of the most impressive things I've ever seen. And I'm like, it just that was like the solidifying moment in Steve Everyone's career. Sure, he can play everything, but that was just really freaking cool.
You know what I thought about it? I wish I had the money to hire a guitar tech like he does.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, me too.
I want a guitar tech. You know?
Oh, so bad. Yeah.
But Paul, you've seen so much changes in what you do. I see your keyboard right behind you on your right side there. Yeah. Think about all the things that you've gone through as far as music. I mean, the instruments playing and all the stuff now you can do that you couldn't do before.
Yeah, I mean, I still have the Hammond and the Leslie speaker here in the studio. I don't tour them I don't tour them anymore, though.
Oh yeah, they're so heavy.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that, I mean, certainly don't have to rely on a hall having a decent piano that's in tune in concert pitch anymore, which is what used to have to be. Yeah. I think the first keyboard I had was probably a Hohner Pianet T. But sort of like a chime bar piano thing. But I don't know. I think the relationship we have with these keyboards is different, because really this is a big computer.
Yep.
It's different to a guitar, which is, I say it's got a soul is not right, but they're handmade and each one is different. Mm-hmm. This is a computer. It's a very good one, but it's still a computer, and they don't have the personality in the same way I think that guitars do.
There's a band out of Ohio called the Cold Stares that is on Bonamassa's label. Mm-hmm. And I talked to them last year. They were going to Europe, and they said they like going to Europe because it's easier to play, but also they still play CDs over there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And he said they know who we are before we get there. Instead, if you just listen to streaming all the time, you may never get exposed until you're playing live. Mm. And, if you're going for streaming all the time, we all know there's no money in it. So, you have to have millions of streams, and you still don't get paid very much.
No. There's no money, but you have to do it. We look at it as a promotional thing. People will find the band on Spotify or Apple Music, and often they'll say that's why they've come to a gig, or YouTube. They come to a gig, and then they'll buy the CD because they want to support the band. So it's much for that now. They might say, well, nothing I can play it on, but I want to support the band. It's interesting what Joanne's doing. I mean, the new album sounds really good. The tracks I've heard, it's all produced by Kevin Shirley. It's great. It's a nice big sound. And last year's Peter Gabriel album, his first in 20 years, it's 12 tracks. He released a track, one a month for the 12 months.
Yeah.
In a very Peter Gabriel way, on each full moon, he released a track.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the year, at the end of the year, sure, you can buy the album. And I did. There it is.
Yeah.
And again, very Peter Gabriel. There are 3 CDs in there, 2 entire different mixes of the album, and a surround mix as well, a Dolby Atmos mix. So if you're going to buy a CD, it's a big luxury package you're going to want nowadays to make it worth your while, I think.
You got a guy here that's a producer engineer. Already, who are you going to talk to? Who's your producer? Well, I got this guy I know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he's cheap as well. Got good rates. But yeah, no, it's been a learning experience for me as well. Kind of learning all the ins and outs of not just playing, but also the more production side of things. I'm not a producer at all, but like I've dabbled in kind of mixing my own demos and things like that. Not very well, but it's interesting being able to hear these differences now, picking up on these kind of things, like he was saying about being able to hear the MP3s and stuff like that. But I remember distinctly on, I think it was probably our second album recording, I remember me saying, we have to mix this in a way that makes it sound good coming out of an iPhone speaker. And I was like, oh, God. Looking back at it now, I'm like, that's so stupid. But like, even then,
no, it's not.
We got to get on the trend of the iPhones and everything.
It has to do both. I mean, even back in the 80s, when we were doing the John Peel sessions for BBC Radio 1, we'd be mixing it in Maid of Vale on the 48-channel SSL console. What's the first thing you do? Put it onto a cassette, go out and sit in your car outside and play it. Because that's how it's going to sound.
Yeah.
So that's always been there, that kind of check. Because you can listen to it on your £20,000 speakers and go, yeah, but who's listening to it on that?
Nobody.
So,
Very few people. And they used to tell
Yeah.
me years ago back in the 90s, a friend of mine was a guitar teacher. He said, listen to it in a Honda. He said there's something about Hondas back that time you would listen
right.
to it. I mean, the speakers weren't as good as they are now, but still, he said, listen to it in a Honda. If it sounds good in your Honda, then you know it's going to sound good everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I assume now that you do, when you record, you do everything digitally, or are you still using tape?
No, it's digital. Yeah, but what we do is we don't use this room for the initial live take for live drums and bass and rhythm guitar. We use another studio for that, which has really got a really nice wooden room. It's a converted barn, and it's got a valve console in it. So yeah, it goes into Logic there, and I use Pro Tools here. But we start off with it being in that good room with the proper mics done properly, playing live. Then sure, it comes back here into Pro Tools, and everything else is done here. But we'd like to start off with a real live room feel, and with everybody playing.
You know, Matt, the advantage that you have, or though not the advantage, if you're not spending your time worrying about how to engineer and master and all that stuff, you could just play. You can sit down after it and help your producer mix, your engineer mix. But at the end of the day, you can just focus on, and some of the artists I talk to, I ask them how much they get involved. Some of them want to get involved with it. Usually they're involved in post when they want to mix it. But a lot of them say, I just want to play. I don't want to, I just turn on the microphone or whatever, plug me in or whatever I got to do. That way I can focus on my music instead of focusing on, do I need to add a tambourine over here? Should we bring this up a little bit on, because you don't have to do that. Well, 2 last questions for you. Matt, what do you typically use amp-wise on the stage?
Mesa Boogies. Been using them
okay.
for the last, I'd say probably about 5 years now, something like that. 5, 6 years. Currently using a Mark V.
I'm familiar with that.
I got that because, again, it was just a good Swiss Army knife amp. Just does everything that I wanted to do. It's played everything from country to metal, and everything in between. So I can show up to any gig with that amp and be able to play something that would be suitable for that. Yeah, it's never really let me down, apart from when I've let it down. If you know what I mean? Kind of treating it wrong.
And so, what's on the floor in front of you? What are your pedals of choice?
I use a fair amount of pedals, and there's always a discussion of is it too many pedals? And I just say nah. I just say shush. But I love having a good amp and a guitar and all that kind of thing. Yes, that is the core of it. But I love being able to play around with the sound, get different sounds out of it, create these kind of soundscape things. I don't try and rely on the pedals. I try and obviously keep it to playing, but I love being able to create these textures and soundscapes and that kind of thing. It just makes it more entertaining, not for the audience necessarily, but at least for me. And it makes me play differently, and kind of get inspired by it a bit more. I've seen people plug straight into an amp and make it sound great. I just don't think I'm one of those guys. I have done on whenever it's called for the occasion. But I love playing about the pedals. I love creating these weird, beautiful sounds, or these horrible, horrific sounds as well. It just makes it really fun and inspirational in a way. Kind of, if I turn on a certain thing, I'll be like, that doesn't really work for this kind of thing, and turn it off again though. Or the other way around, where it's like, oh, actually that sounds kind of weird and cool in here, and I'll put that in here and there. A lot of stuff. I'm kind of tap dancing a lot all night. And
well, don't you? We were talking about Bonamassa at the Royal Albert Hall. Yeah. Talking about Eric Clapton coming on. They gave him a monster cable at his Fender Strat, and he plugged into a Fender Twin or whatever. That was it.
Yeah. That was
I ain't no Eric Clapton. I can play close to Eric or play close to him, but as far as stylings, I'm like you. It's got to have something in it. It's got to have a little delay or something. Or B.B. King. Yeah. B.B. King did the same thing. So what's your short-term plan to just try to continue to get better? Or what's that from now what you see in the near future?
It's mainly focused on that at the minute. Like I say, health comes first. We got to get everything ready, figure out the plan and kind of get settled in. And then we can figure out what we can do or what we can't do after that. I start my new treatment tomorrow.
What are they going to do?
Chemotherapy.
Chemo?
Different type of chemotherapy. I was on chemo for since June of last year, but on a specific kind. And it's obviously survived through all that, so we're going to try a different one now. And a few other different lines of treatment going on from there, really. So yeah, it's going to take a while. It's one of those things you never really say how long it's going to be.
No, they don't. They don't know. All I can do is wish you best of luck, my friend.
Thank you very much. I do appreciate it.
I appreciate you taking time. Both of you do, because I think both of you have wonderful history. And being that you got that funny accent too. I don't know what it is. But so that's all you got to do. Come to the stage, start talking, and they go, "Okay, great, just play."
Yeah, exactly.
Another thing. Two things. Thank you so much for taking time to talk to me. Pleasure to talk to both of you. Yeah. And I mean this with all sincerity, my friend. I wish you the best of luck. I know you're not going through the greatest time in your life, but you got a lot of people praying for you, even somebody in Dallas, Texas.
Oh, bless you. That's very kind of you. Thank you.